All right, so here we are for the final lessons learned, and we will take anywhere between 25 to 30 minutes to ensure that we can take in all of the key takeaways that you've had in the day. I've said this at every Operation Defend the North, that smart people learn from their own mistakes. The really smart ones learn from the mistakes of others. So hopefully, all of you have learned a lot from the mistakes that I made, the mistakes that we made as a collective playing out this role. But jokes aside, Lessons Learned is truly a session where you convert the pain into a process and you build resiliency through this. This session has no prompts. It has no injects per se. Everyone here is not playing a role anymore from STS. We're really taking in lessons learned. And we're going to take your questions. We're going to answer as many of them as we can. And we're going to get perspective on what folks thought. Obviously, as the moderator, I will take this moment and say one of the biggest takeaways for me was in every Operation Defend the North, you have to a degree gotten very used to this notion that we've identified the issue, we've contained it to some extent, we've eradicated it, we have a plan for systems to come back up. And here we're in this really odd situation where so much is happening, but given the intensity of STS, the context, we have to keep systems running, but we're doing it not entirely sure if it's completely secure to our liking. And that's the risks that we've taken on in this environment. So with that said, I know that there were quite a few questions around. I'm going to ask the CyberX team. I know there's a lot of moving parts right now. I'm going to ask the CyberX team if we can make sure that we have 2 volunteers or one of them with the mic somewhere where I can see them so that I can take some of the questions. Who has the mic right now? The lights are a little difficult for me to see clearly, but I guess the mic is coming down right now. There were a couple of questions already in the audience. I know there were some questions from before. There was one here, and then I'll go to the lady on my right as well. The mic is coming down, and of course, as it comes down, Vinay, I just want to get your perspective, and then we'll take the question, which is to my left. Vinay, this was your first experience. Any immediate thoughts? Any major lessons learned that you took away?
Absolutely. So I think I have a long list. I can continue for 30 minutes, to be honest, right? But I would like to take only a few minutes what I learned here. Right from starting, like, architectural way, from the design all the way till remediation, I felt, first of all, the lesson learned is it was a very bad design and it was a very bad architecture, right? And then during investigation, some of the things which would have prompted us to identify some of the things early in the stages, I think we totally missed it. We kept talking during the investigation stage, it's a cloud environment. But we missed the real advantages of cloud by bringing the data dark trace in. We would have rather looking at the endpoint or the servers, we would have gone for the right plug and play tab-based module where the entire ecosystem of the cloud should have been monitored by dark trace. We would have discovered and unwrapped Pandora of the things. For example, API keys and unidentified, or maybe not unauthenticated events, and all those HTTPS keys, TLS keys, or 1.2, whatever we had, we would have discussed it much earlier in the stages. And we could have really remediated till certain stage. And we also kept talking, being cloud, we didn't need the backup. That, I feel, it gave me a little bit of, I worked in the environments born in the cloud, and rather we need a more data recovery and more, solid data recovery solutions when we are in the cloud. And where we've seen, and since we were also relying on infrastructure as a code as a practice, I feel we should have also narrated that SecDevOps and shifting left capability, did we have it? If we really need to fire the alternate ecosystem of the high availability environment, which we didn't see it in the architecture, which, see, public safety is involved, human lives are involved, threats are involved. We are almost going to touch the 200 million breach value. So I think these kind of a system certainly need investments, and it should have been a high availability and active passive system. right? That's where I would say these are some of the lessons learned. So I have a long list, but I think I'll stop here.
Can I jump in?
Absolutely, Vivian.
Yeah. Can I jump in here for a second?
Can I have you mute, Vinay?
Awesome. You're absolutely right. You know, when I hear about things like the moving to cloud, infrastructure as code, it's a noble goal. There's a lot that the organization wanted to do with their modernization agenda, but they're not taking advantage of all the things that are baked into cloud and the cloud shared responsibility model. There's certain things in this scenario, like the data. In any shared responsibility model, you're still responsible for the data. So the data exfiltration, the compromise of PCI data, that's all on us, on STS collectively, right? But if you're using, there was a lack of maturity in leveraging infrastructure as code, but not using any of the automation or the IaaS or PaaS features behind it that would have made the discovery and the containment a lot easier. You're talking about, modernizing a legacy system on microservices and shifting it to cloud. That's fantastic, but you're not taking advantage of the code scanning and the automation and the key rotation and the secrets management that come in a modern CI/CD pipeline. So that, to me, is a maturity thing. And it's great to modernize. It's great to move to modern architecture. You still have to secure it. It's great to move to cloud. You still have to monitor it. And those are some of the gaps there. And I'll come back a little bit later to talk about security architecture specifically in more detail. We can go to other people in the meantime.
Thank you for that. The breach may have ended, but the lessons certainly have not. There was a question there. We'll take your question. If you can turn on the mic and speak into it. I might need you to switch off your mic. Go ahead. It's not turned on. Brian, to the rescue, please. Yeah, there. You're good to go now.
Can you hear me okay? Oh,
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So my question was, as part of the recovery process, how important do you guys think a contingency plan needs to be developed and potentially shared with the public to reinstill public trust? Because I feel like that was one of the main things that was somewhat eroded in this process. Just wanted to get your key takeaways on that.
Octavia?
Yeah, I can. So I think what happened here was that information wasn't shared with the public early enough, but I think we have to be very careful with what information is internal and what information is external, right? And so a plan for the public to actually function is what they needed, right? How do you continue to function? What information do you need to have? Where can you get the proper source of information? Then after we actually developed a contingency plan for the future internally, then we can actually have one person make a public statement on the future of STS. And I think that's one thing that we did not get to is we know that we are actually hurting. We know that we're doing this. This is the information that you need to know. This is a trusted source. Do not look at any other source. And we know, and then the apology never came. Right, and that's something that we should have actually done. And anytime there's a issue with public trust, issue with information that affects people personally, the first thing we need to do always is to issue that apology and have that empathy.
Thank you. I'll go to the next question. There was, and I'm just trying to go off memory, so you will bear with me. There's a question from the lady here to my right. And while we're going to your question, I see yours and then yours as well, and then yours too. Brian, it was her? Yeah. Before you just ask your question, there was a question online, and then we'll come to yours very quickly. Thank you. Osman, I want to bring this question to you. And online, I can sense that sentiment that, I say this at quite a few Operation Defend the Nords, was this really realistic? In the sense that there's a question saying, did we have playbooks? I mean, we did. But the chaos that you saw happening over here, in your perspective, leading OT security at GTAA, was that chaos something you could relate to?
So there are a few items here I think worth noting is that in this particular scenario, the teams on the ground, they weren't really empowered. They didn't have any direction. whenever there is the public involved and whenever you have an organization that deals with the public, that deals with critical infrastructure, safety is the main priority. That really drives everything. And anything that is an incident is first and foremost looked at from a safety lens, right? So from the perspective of being realistic, the people on the ground, they would be empowered to kick in a crisis plan that was to deal with crowd control, that's to deal with reassuring the public. All of these sort of plans exist in such organizations. So from that perspective, I would say that it was a little bit more chaos than you would see. The crowds would still gather. You would still have scenarios where people would ask questions, but at the same time, you would still have staff there to reassure them and emergency response teams deployed that would counter this situation a little bit more than what we saw.
Fair enough. Thank you for that. The question that was here, if you can just turn it on, please.
I think it's on. Okay, so my question is for the panel that do you by any chance think that this could be an insider attack, like one of you could go rogue, maybe due to any reason? And by saying this, I just want to know that how can you be sure if you bring up the system back, maybe get a recycle every API key or stuff like that, how can you be sure that this would not happen again, considering the critical infrastructure, the people getting affected, and the sentiments behind this?
Fair enough. Alex, do you want to chime in there?
There is no certainty. What our job is, as incident responders, is to contain the breach, limit the blast radius, impacts to the business, bring the business back online. That's a tactical situation that we want to address. That's our mandate. Post-breach, and first having a debrief here to understand what went well, what didn't, why didn't it, et cetera. Really important. But the work after is days, weeks, months, particularly if it's going to be something attacking something so critical as a transit system. And that's where having spun up a parallel infrastructure allows us time to be doing a deep dive into the affected systems. Now, to your point, did we get him out? And is the attacker coming in through a different way, or is it an insider that's just going to provision a new key? Those are all likely scenarios that could happen. And it's the idea, NIST 861 R2, or now R3, does talk about how it is very cyclical what we're having to do. Ideally, we try to do it somewhat linear in a theatrical sense here, because we don't have all day, but in reality, it's never that linear. And my role as a chaos engineer is to discourage the linearness that we all want to follow of the problem, solution, go home, and pat ourselves on the back. But in reality, an organization would be monitoring throughout the incident, looking for other indicators of compromise, doing threat hunting to continue to make sure and try to validate, get as close to certainty as possible, recognizing we'll never get to that level of certainty during the incident, and then weeks and months after, you're going to be keeping an eye on things, and potentially doing a much more rigorous rebuild and refactor of an environment if it had catastrophic architectural design flaws.
Okay, fair enough. There was a question here, and then here. Yes, go ahead.
I have two questions, actually. I was confused through the process, understanding the whole exercise, understanding when this incident actually turned into business continuity and disaster recovery.
Right.
Because I had a feeling this was constantly incident management, instead of at some point clearly saying, because of effect on these business functions, we are now in business continuity phase, blah, blah, blah. Because I believe these organizations that are systematical, they have the plans, clear plans. It never happened, and you actually didn't have control at all, because you were handling this as a chaotic incident. If you declared this was the stage in business, because these business functions are affected, you would have kept the control of the situation. So don't you have tests done before with certain scenarios?
Fair. Yeah,
These are just the questions.
Yeah, very, very valid point. Manas, you've been very active. Manas and then Lionel. Manas, do you want to chime in on this? And my immediate response is, and I said this on the chat as well, there's a little bit of like education and entertainment, a bit of edutainment that happens in this, and some liberties that we take. But your point is valid. Manas, I'll go to you, and then Lionel, and then the question here and here.
So this is a very interesting point, because I was in a break bringing this up, that at what point do we start the BCP? Is it at containment? Is it at eradication? Do we start, Vinay and I were chatting in Kim, and at what point do we start the comms piece of the BCP at least? So get the leaderships aligned, get the communication going, so that the internal teams, at least in the organization, are aware of something is happening. Maybe not all the details, but at least they are aware, so that when things start to unravel, which we saw unraveling across the board, especially the scams and the fake information, then they can deal with that at their level. So going back to your point, yes, ideally an organization of this stature should have a BCP drill happening at least quarterly. And that is one of the lessons learned, to call out, that we should make sure that at least subparts of, so the MVP, one of the things we were called out was, what's the most viable platform that we need to keep operational. So those should be part of the BCP exercise at the minimum, if you're not able to do an organization wide. So you can handle a scenario of this nature. And then of course, this does require all the stakeholders in the organization to be part of that on a much higher frequency than quarterly, I would say, that the tabletop should keep happening on a more frequent basis.
Thank you, Manas. Lionel, and then Octavia.
Absolutely. So to piggyback on what Manas was sharing, so and also when it comes to realistic scenarios, usually in that context, right, an organization like STS is considered as a crown corporation, especially when you're talking about Canada, Ontario. So which means that technically a lot of services and agencies that such an organization can leverage to make sure that, one, there is enough structure, enough readiness, but also testing and making sure that there are some plans and playbook in place. So there's some agencies like, for instance, the CCCS that can have like appliances monitoring your network, and then also reporting any cyber incident to them, and then usually they will come and help to the best way possible. Or we have also RCMP that can help to, for instance, manage when there's a crisis involving the public and things like that. So there's a lot of organization at a federal level or even also provincial level that usually this type of organization could leverage. And it's important to, one, be aware of this, but also to make sure that we have those proper contacts that we can activate anytime we need them, and not just wait for when there is an incident, right? So it's also, I guess, about that leverage that we need to make sure that we do.
Octavia, why don't you chime in?
I would just say, one of the things and the nature of this exercise or the nature of this production kind of lends itself to things that are not really realistic. And the one thing that is one of my pet peeves is when we're actually, if you're in real life, right, if this is a real incident, the people who are accountable for actually getting things done, they don't ask why questions, they just do it. And so I think that is a lot of what you see, was that instead of actually saying, this is what is getting done, this is what I am doing, this is what my team is doing, there was a lot of why aren't we doing, why aren't we having, why isn't this happening? And in reality, that would have caused, I know, not throwing my company under, but in reality, if that happened in my company, there would be arguments and fights, because it is really your job to actually get those things done. And so we have to, in your roles, if this happened, make sure you take that accountability and actually stand on your role and make sure that you're actually taking your authority.
A lesson learned, a lesson ignored becomes the next incident.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the other thing with respect to incidents for an organization of this scale, there are multiple types of incidents. And I think where the question about frequency of testing out certain playbooks and plans comes into place. A lot of times the testing happens in isolation with a certain department, with a certain group. But oftentimes what is lacking is that coordinated tabletop exercise, let's say, that weaves in all of these different themes together, because an incident that occurs could involve multiple groups. So just as an example, in an organization that has these type of cyber physical systems, you could have a cyber incident that turns into a safety incident. And in that case, if you take a step back and look at it from a planning perspective, let's say before the incident, you're conducting your tabletop exercises. If you don't have that tie-in between your safety teams and your cyber incident response teams, then when an actual incident happens, you're not going to have a defined playbook that covers both those scenarios. So as an organization that's as complex as this, it's very important for these sort of asset owners and business leaders to make sure that those tie-ins are there when it comes to crisis response.
I wanted to ask the audience, raise your hand if you think this was a successful tabletop exercise. And I can't see because I'm staring into the sun, but so I disagree with all of you. And here's the reason why. If you walk away with a tabletop exercise being like, man, we did a really good job, you're not challenging yourself. You're not testing the assumptions. You're not stress testing everything you want to do. And that's arguably part of how we run these things, is we want to create that chaos because that is what we're going to run into. So we didn't give any of these players an incident response plan or playbooks or anything like that. We also have never worked together. So like that is a recipe for disaster. And it provides some good theatrics and stress and really shows how things can go sideways. Now, is that not realistic? I'd argue it's totally realistic, because there's a lot of organizations out there that still do need to, not plan and find out. So, tabletops are generally, you should be walking away being like, that hurt. Now I know what we need to fix tomorrow. Right? Like it should be very, enabling. This is a little bit of an extreme case of being so unprepared and running around with our head cut off, but like that is how it happens. Like war rooms are seldom as cordial as we have been to each other. It is a lot of swearing, it's a lot of stress, and it's a lot of people's egos on the line.
Absolutely. If your plans worked, you are in the wrong tabletop. 100% agreed. Okay, there were at least 3 questions that I saw. One here, and then there was one at the back, which has been up there for a while. So we'll take these 2 questions and then take the third. I'll take all 3 questions in a row, and then we'll gather responses. To the gentleman in the blue shirt who has his hand up. Yes, if you can turn on the mic. Try to keep it as short as possible.
Test.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. So the government of Canada put out communication last week regarding critical infrastructure.
Water communication systems, yeah.
Yeah. Specifically around the rise of potentially state-sponsored cyber attacks.
True.
I'm wondering given the geopolitical situation, what should STS have done differently, especially in the early stages, when it was still a potential cyber attack versus a confirmed cyber attack?
Fair. I'll hold on to that question. I will get you an answer. Amit, Talha, I'm looking at you folks potentially to chime in. There was a question to you right there. Yes, that one. And then there was one right at the top. I cannot see all the way there, but whoever that was, be ready. We're going to go to you next. Go ahead.
So in Module 4, Shruti did mention that they have been communicating with their team who is communicating with the public, right? But from the beginning, we have seen that there's a lot of misinformation on websites, the PA system, the QR codes. So when she meant that, yes, she's communicating with the team and it's been communicated to the public, have you not received the backslash from the public saying that, no, this is not right, maybe we can't trust you or such like? And that's realistic. If it was a realistic situation, how would you guys, the advisory board or the panelists, would handle the situation?
Okay, I've noted down those 2 questions. I just want to take the last one from the top there, and then I do have to answer these. We're a little bit short on time. If we can get the mic up there quicker, it's where Roshan is. Go ahead.
Yep, so thank you. First of all, I think this was a great session, so thank you for leading this. I think the last couple of comments from Osman, Alex, Manas, Lionel, and Octavia started covering this. But I think the value in this exercise is in highlighting the failures, the things that go wrong. And I think we did talk a little bit about a lot about the technology failures. That's a reality. That's always going to happen. There'll always be something that it's evolving, and we could always do better, use a tool better, and this is not the time to dispute it. I think this is great in highlighting some of the challenges around trying to bite off too much more than what we can chew, trying to do PR at the same time as resolving this incident. We talked about engaging an external vendor. How about engaging partners? You're running a critical service you should be already engaging the police service and so on. So I think all this really ties back to the importance of having a structured BCP and a BCP approach that's tested.
I'll take that. And look, we only have about 5 to 6 minutes left, and I do have to wrap this up. So, Vivian, I think you wanted to take the first question, then Talha and Amit, I'm going to come to you to see if you have any responses. Vivian, go ahead.
Okay, awesome. So the first question was about, the statement from the government of Canada about critical infrastructure, what we should be doing. And I think one thing that we didn't discuss, and there was a question that came up about it, was about cyber threat intelligence. So when something happens, one of the first things you have to do is figure out, okay, is this an IT outage, or is this actually a cyber incident? If a cyber incident, am I being attacked? And then from a threat intelligence perspective, one of the first things you want to figure out is this happening to anybody else? Has this happened to anybody else? And that's what your cyber threat intelligence program is there for, to look for IOCs in the wild, to look for TTPs that are similar to known threat actors, that maybe this exact same thing happened in another city or in another country within the past week. And I think towards the end, we were starting to see indicators of a similar attack happening with other transportation entities in other jurisdictions. So getting that threat intel and then sharing that intel with other people helps the collective, right? Cybersecurity is a team sport. So what can we do? What we can all do is in our respective industries, take a close look at what you're doing about cyber threat intelligence, about what you're monitoring, about what you're feeding into your threat intel platform, what you're automatically blocking, who are you sharing information with? And I think that's a really critical part if you want to look at a nationwide level, particularly with the way that nation-state actors are developing now geopolitically. This is a really important thing for us to do in every single industry.
Okay, I'll take that.
Ali, my apologies for the interruption, but we're receiving a breaking news transmission. I think you'll want to see this.
I've just received word. ODTN News has just received an anonymous message delivered directly to our internal systems. It contains only 3 words. This isn't over. But they are chilling, especially after the day the city has just endured. We don't know yet who sent it, how it reached us, or what it means for what comes next. But I can tell you, the newsroom is uneasy, and so am I. I'm Roshan Khan. This is ODTN News. We'll stay on this as long as we can. Please stay with us.
What did I just say?
Exactly. Talha and Amit, there were 2 questions, and there's been this revelation as well. If you can try to, in a minute or 2, provide your perspective as we also take in what the meaning is of this "this is not over" message. Go ahead.
Okay. So I think for the question that you had, in terms of communication, I think that's there was a lack of, I think, collaboration, as well as kind of looking at engaging our crisis and communication teams. I think that's definitely something that I noticed that was lacking here. And in turn, that would, the public would be coming and asking, okay, what's going on here? We definitely did not have that, a lot of that. So that's something I think we definitely would need to work on, ensuring that we're collaborating, we're amongst ourselves, right? I think everyone has spoken about just working together. I mean, we're not working together, not communicating. I think a lot of times people were asking, okay, what's going on here? I think in a real situation, I think in a war room that would be happening, but in this situation here, I think there was not a lot of that, and I think that would definitely help for your question. I don't remember the question up there. Sorry.
Amit, thank you for that response. Amit, based on what you just saw and the question that came up as well, your takeaways.
Yes. So I echo the sentiment across the table here, and at least throughout the exercise. I think we really need to have an internal communication that was somewhat lacking. We had unified systems, which was not needed. If we had multiple entries, the situation could have been better. At least that's what I hope so. However, we had multiple communications going on inside the organization, which created time lapses, which created other constraints that delayed the processes. And as Octavia has said, that eventually led to lack in the external communication that we had. In addition to that, how I saw this scenario overall was if a house is burned, a team was trying to put together a new wing for the house. However, the next door neighbors were very uneasy because they didn't know if the fire is being spread to them or not. And no one was really paying attention to that. And that being said, we really need to focus on those blueprints so that we have a clear indication on what the damage is, where the damage is coming from, and right now the news that is coming in that it is not over. The question remains: have we actually tapped on the source of this attack, or is it still to be tapped? That is still unknown. In addition to that, I would say if we focus on getting the right funding in place, having all the stakeholders informed about what's happening in timely manner, these kind of things could be handled better than what it happened today. So my takeaway, better communication, better handling of teams, SecOp teams, and CI/CD. They all need to work together in order to get things going.
I have an update, sorry. I'm on multiple intelligence groups right now, and BC and Alberta Transit Systems are reporting a very similar message of what we just heard for what Roshan Khan was saying about on ODTN News right now.
So in the word of Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'll be back, as Yasin on the chat just posted. Well, with that, we are at the end of Operation Defend the North Toronto, and I know that there were lots and lots of questions that we still have to answer. I do encourage all of you to chat with the other advisors, chat amongst yourselves as well, and to drop them on LinkedIn or to drop them on the live chat, and we'll be sure to have somebody answer them for you. Two very quick things before we close, as we are at the top of the hour and we do need to end. Number one is right after I conclude, I'm going to ask all of you very quickly to come up on stage so that the CyberX team can take a picture with all of you, audience, and those who are on the stage right now. Online folks, feel free to take a picture of the screen as well if you want, or a selfie, and share it online. With that said, two very, very quick things. Number one is thank you to all of the sponsors, the attendees, and the advisors. Please join me in giving them all a round of applause. And I will encourage all of you to stay tuned to the CyberX website to find out more about the 2026 series of Operation Defend the North with some new chairs and co-chairs and additional folks from across Canada. If there's one lesson that I've learned from today is that in a Canada that is built on code, if you don't defend that code, you will lose it. Thank you for being part of the defense. Have a wonderful rest of the December and happy holidays.